Hi, I'm Thomas, and I'm very happy to present our work, Listening to the Voices, Ethical Characters of Conversational User Interfaces According to Experts and Frequent Users. Before I begin, I would like to thank all of my co-authors without whom this work would not have been possible. I'm both very humbled and proud to be part of this amazing team to work on such an important topic. Because this work draws a lot from Dr. Pattern's scholarship, I want to briefly outline what this background is about. And for this, I brought an example based on Garaialde's 2018 work, where they screen captured this image from Instagram. And this represents a simple nagging behavior from Instagram, where the platform asks its users to turn on their notifications, but does not give the option to permanently dismiss this kind of message. In my past work, I've often also utilized the definition that was provided in my Doyle's 2021 paper, where the authors define dark patterns as user interface design choices that benefit an online service by coercing, steering, or deceiving users into making decisions that, if fully informed and capable of selecting alternatives, they might not make. So why are we looking into conversational user interfaces here? And the reasons for this are threefold. First, there has already been an increasing amount of work that looks into dark patterns in graphical user interfaces. However, other domains are still relatively unexplored. Meanwhile, a growing body of work has demonstrated the persuasive dimensions of CUIs and the potential of negative and persuasive interactions that users may experience. By addressing unethical caveats early on, we hope that we can get a head start with this kind of work by understanding the problems and informed countermeasures as early as now. Generally, conversational user interfaces come in different sizes, different forms. But most prominently, we have smart home devices that may sit on your counter in everyday home situations. And they're ubiquitous as voice assistants in smartphones, and in the form of text-based chatbots that you may find in online stores and other online platforms, today also more empowered or supported by generative AI in large language models. And with this background, the aim of this research is to answer the following research question. Which ethical caveats should be considered when designing CUI interactions, and how should they be addressed? To answer this research question, we decided to construct an interview study that incorporates dark pattern-focused questions. To this end, we took inspiration from Bartl's 2019 paper, where they introduced 5 dark pattern characteristics. And for each of these characteristics, we developed a question while trying to stay as close as possible to the original definitions. So for instance, for a symmetric, we asked participants whether the user interface design imposed any unequal weights or burdens on the available choices that were presented to the user in the interface. For the covert characteristics, we asked the question whether the effect of the user interface design choice is hidden from the user. For the deceptive characteristics, we asked whether the user interface design induced false beliefs, either through affirmative misstatements, misleading statements, or omissions. For hides information, we asked whether the user interface obscures or delays the presentation of necessary information to the user. And lastly, for the restrictive characteristics, we asked the participants whether the user interface restricted the set of choices that were available to users. Importantly, for all of these questions, we asked the participants to please draw from their experience, both from or with voice-based systems as well as text-based systems. Additionally, we invited them to draw from past experiences, as well as speculate about possible future scenarios where these characteristics may be important. For this study, we decided to recruit participants from 3 cohorts. Researchers who are involved in the research of conversational user interfaces and underlying technologies, practitioners who are involved in the development of commercial products, and users who frequently use the systems at least on a weekly basis. To this end, we recruited a total of 27 participants whose interviews we then transcribed and used in our thematic analysis. Here, we followed advice by Brown et al., where multiple authors of this work collaborated together in the coding aspects of the transcriptions, engaged in iterative discussions, and then constructed the themes together, also in an iterative process. In our findings, we identified 5 themes across the interviews. each which appended with an ethical caveat that kind of carries the ethical dimensions and implications of each of the themes. The first one is building trust and guiding privacy. Here, the ethical caveat would say that users feel vulnerable to use CUIs, causing a need for CUI developers to prioritize transparency and control over data handling. In the second theme that we identified, guiding through interactions, the ethical caveat addresses the guidelines and frameworks that are needed to educate developers to develop accessible CUIs that empower users with diverse technological literacy to confidently interact with available features. In the human-like harmony theme, the appended ethical caveat carries that anthropomorphic features should be implemented with care and in line with the CUI's capabilities to support intuitive and authentic interactions, preventing unrealistic expectations. In the inclusivity and diversity theme, we found the ethical caveat that the development and design of conversational user interface interactions need to consider individual needs and characteristics of users, especially marginalized groups, ensuring that equitable CUI interactions are possible. And lastly, the setting expectations theme appends with the ethical caveat that CUI capabilities should avoid deceptive interactions and, instead, be transparent to users to prevent frustration and mistrust. As particularly the practitioner cohort requested more guidance when developing ethical interactions, we decided to construct a model to support their endeavors. To this end, the CUI Expectation Cycle situates an expectation gap between the user and their systems. This model adopts the goals of evaluation and execution from the Norman as bridges to communicate system capabilities to the user and for them to then be able to formalize realistic goals that they can achieve. However, either of these two bridges is delimited by certain factors. On the one side, we have deception delimiters that carry untrue representation of capabilities and may thereby misinform the user about the possible capabilities. On the other side, distrust may negatively affect the execution bridge when uncertainties, for instance, regarding privacy or data handling, are left obscure, or negative critical experiences with companies influence users' behavior and trust despite any positive design choices. Moreover, we noticed that either of these two delimiters came in two natures, in extrinsic and in intrinsic forms. This means that CUI design choices, as well as individual experiences from the participants or from the users, have implications on the expectation of the user. Finally, all of our 5 themes connect to this model in some form. And for this, I just brought them up to the slide, showing that the building trust and guarding privacy theme, for example, connects to the deception and the distrust delimiters. The guiding through interaction theme connects to the evaluation bridge. The human-like harmony, just like the building trust and guarding privacy, also connects the two delimiters, but in different levels. The inclusivity and diversity theme connects to the execution bridge, while the setting expectation theme informs the expectation gap. To further aid practitioners' work, we formulated a guiding question for each of the ethical caveats so that they can ask these questions throughout the work and hopefully highlight possible pitfalls and unethical design. With the building trust and guarding privacy, they could ask whether the system or interaction provides accessible and transparent information about personal data with easy control thereof. In the second theme, they could ask whether the system or the interaction adequately informs the user about its technical capabilities to enable full utilization of its features. In the human-like harmony theme, they could ask the guiding question whether the interaction or system clarifies the presence of anthropomorphic features to avoid misconceptions and unrealistic expectations. With the inclusivity and diversity theme, they could ask whether the system or interaction caters towards users with diverse needs, potentially through alternative interactions where otherwise inaccessible. And lastly, with the setting expectations, we formulated the guiding question whether the system or interaction handles user prompts truthfully and clarifies the scope of its capability to provide realistic expectations altogether. And we hope that with this work, we provide good answers to our research question about which ethical caveats should be considered when designing CUI interactions and how should they be addressed. And with this, I would like to conclude this presentation. Thank you very much for listening. I included all of the contact details of all the authors involved in this project. If you have any questions or inquiries about our project, please reach out. We are more than happy to answer. Also, I include the QR code to the paper. Feel free to read it. Enjoy. Have a good day. Bye-bye.